The Birth of the Zodiac, A Journey Through the Stars. A gentle bedtime history for peaceful sleep. Opening, an invitation to wonder. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine standing in an ancient desert thousands of years before our time. The air is warm and still. Above you stretches a sky so clear and dark that the stars seem close enough to touch. There are no city lights here, no glow from street lamps or buildings. Just you, the sand beneath your feet, and an ocean of stars overhead. This is how our ancestors saw the night sky, and in that darkness they found something extraordinary. They found stories, they found patterns, they found meaning in the eternal dance of lights above them. Tonight, we're going on a journey together. A journey that begins in the cradle of civilization, in the land between two rivers, where shepherds first watched the stars and wondered what they meant. We'll travel through time, following the zodiac from its birth in ancient Babylon, through the wisdom of Egyptian priests, across the Mediterranean to Greece and Rome, and finally to our modern world, where millions still look to the stars for guidance. So settle in, let your breathing slow. There's no rush. We have all the time in the world to explore this ancient story. Let us begin. Part 1. The Land Between Two Rivers. Our story starts in a place the Greeks would later call Mesopotamia. The name means the land between rivers, and those rivers were the Tigris and the Euphrates. Today we know this region as Iraq, but 5,000 years ago it was home to one of humanity's first great civilizations, the Sumerians, and later the Babylonians. Imagine yourself there now. It's around 3000 BCE. The sun has set over the city of Uruk, one of the world's first cities. Mud brick buildings rise against the darkening sky. The Great Ziggurat, a massive stepped pyramid, dominates the skyline. This is a temple, a mountain built by human hands to bring Earth closer to heaven. On the top of this ziggurat stands a priest. His name has been lost to time, but his work has not. He is a stargazer, what the Babylonians called an Ummanu, a scholar, a wise man. His job is to watch the heavens and interpret what he sees. Night after night, year after year, he climbs these steps. He carries clay tablets and a stylus, and he watches. The Babylonians were obsessed with the sky, but not in the way we might think. They weren't astronomers in our modern sense, seeking to understand the physics of the universe. They were looking for messages. They believed the gods wrote their intentions in the movements of the stars and planets. Every shift in the heavens was a letter from the divine. This priest notes that Venus has appeared in the east, bright as a torch. He writes this down in cuneiform, pressing his wedge-shaped stylus into soft clay. Tomorrow, he will report this to the king. Venus has appeared, he will say, and according to the ancient tablets, this means prosperity for the harvest. This practice, this careful watching and recording, would continue for thousands of years, and slowly, pattern by pattern, observation by observation, the Babylonians built something remarkable. They built a system for reading the stars, the Mul, up in tablets. Let's move forward in time now to around 1000 BCE. The Babylonian Empire is at its height. The city of Babylon itself is one of the wonders of the ancient world, with its hanging gardens and its towering walls. In the temple libraries, scribes are compiling centuries of astronomical observations into collections. The most famous of these is called the Mul, Apen, which simply means the plow star. These tablets contain lists of stars and constellations, records of when they rise and set, and interpretations of what they mean. Picture one of these tablets now. It's about the size of a modern tablet computer, but heavier, made of baked clay. Across its surface march neat rows of cuneiform signs. If you could read it, you would find descriptions of 33 constellations. Some of their names would sound familiar: the Bull of Heaven, the Great Twins, The scales. The Babylonians divided the sky into three great paths or roads. There was the path of Enlil in the north, the path of Anu across the middle, and the path of Ea in the south. The path of Anu was special. This was the band across the sky, where the sun, moon, and planets moved. The Babylonians noticed that these wandering lights, the planets, stayed within this narrow band, as if traveling on an invisible road. We call this band the ecliptic, and it's along this ecliptic that the Zodiac was born. The Babylonians identified 18 constellations along this path. Not 12, but 18. The number would be refined later. These constellations served as landmarks, signposts marking the sun's yearly journey across the sky. Imagine being a Babylonian farmer. You can't read a calendar, paper doesn't exist yet, but you know that when the sun rises in the constellation of the Bull, it's time to plant barley. When the sun moves to the Twins, summer is coming. The stars are your calendar, written large across the vault of heaven. The birth of astrology. But the Babylonians noticed something else, something that would change everything. They noticed that unusual events in the sky seemed to correspond with unusual events on Earth. There's a famous example recorded on what's known as the Venus tablet of Amisaduqa, dating to the 17th century BCE. The tablet records the appearances and disappearances of Venus over a 21-year period during the reign of King Amisaduqa. But it doesn't just record astronomical data, it records predictions. If Venus appears in the east in the month of Adaru, one entry reads, there will be abundant rain. If Venus disappears in the west in the month of Erisamnu, the king's son will die. This was the birth of astrology, the belief that the movements of celestial bodies could predict earthly events. At first, this was judicial astrology, concerned only with the fate of nations and kings. The stars spoke to rulers about war, peace, harvest, and disaster. The idea seems strange to us now, perhaps. But think about it from the Babylonian perspective. The universe was a unity. Heaven and earth were connected. The gods lived in the sky. When Jupiter moved through the stars, that was the god Marduk walking across the firmament. When Mars turned red and bright, that was the god Nergal, bringer of plague and war, drawing close. Everything was connected. Everything meant something. Night after night, the priest astronomers watched and recorded. They developed mathematical methods to predict planetary movements. They could tell you, with remarkable accuracy, where Jupiter would be a month from now, where Saturn would be in a year. And slowly, over centuries, their observations became more refined. They noticed that the sun's path through the stars took 1 year. They noticed that this path could be divided into 12 roughly equal sections, each spanning 30 degrees, and they assigned a constellation to each section. This was the Zodiac beginning to take shape. The 12 signs emerge. By around 400 BCE, the Babylonians had refined their system to 12 primary zodiacal constellations. These were the constellations that the sun passed through during its yearly journey. Let's name them together, softly, like a lullaby. The hired man, who is Aries, the bull of heaven, who is Taurus, the great twins, who are Gemini, the crab, which is Cancer, the lion, who is Leo, the furrow, which would become Virgo, the scales, which is Libra, the scorpion, which is Scorpio, the soldier, who would become Sagittarius, the goatfish, which is Capricorn, the great one, who is Aquarius, the swallow and the tails, which would become Pisces. Some of these names might surprise you. The hired man instead of ram, the soldier instead of archer. But the essential forms were there. The pattern was established. These signs marked the sun's annual journey. In spring, the sun rose in the constellation of the hired man, and the world renewed itself. In summer, it moved through the bull and the twins, and crops grew tall. In autumn, it passed through the scales and the scorpion, and harvest came. In winter, It traveled with the goatfish and the Great One, and the world rested. The Zodiac was a calendar, yes, but it was becoming something more. It was becoming a language, a way to speak about time, fate, and human nature. Part 2, the gift of the Nile. Now let our attention drift westward, toward another great civilization that looked to the stars with wonder and reverence: Egypt. Picture the Nile Valley at dawn, around 2000 BCE. The sun rises over the eastern desert, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. The great river flows north, bringing life to the narrow band of green that is Egypt. Beyond the green, on either side, stretches endless sand. The Egyptians, like the Babylonians, were careful observers of the sky, but their approach was different. Where the Babylonians saw omens and messages from gods, the Egyptians saw order, precision, and eternal return. Sirius and the calendar. The most important star for the Egyptians wasn't in the zodiac at all. It was Sirius, the brilliant blue-white star they called Sopdet. We know it as the dog star, the brightest star in our night sky. Every year, after a long absence, Sirius would reappear in the eastern sky just before dawn. The Egyptians called this event the heliacal rising of Sirius, and it was crucial because it coincided almost exactly with the annual flooding of the Nile. Imagine being an Egyptian priest astronomer, watching for this moment. You've been up before dawn for weeks now, scanning the eastern horizon, and then, one morning, there it is. A brilliant point of light, shimmering in the pale pre-dawn sky. Sirius has returned. Within days, the Nile would begin to rise, bringing rich black silt that would fertilize the fields for another year. The return of Sirius meant the return of life itself. This gave the Egyptians one of the world's first accurate calendars. They divided the year into 12 months of 30 days each, plus 5 extra days. 365 days. They were only a quarter day off from the true solar year. The Egyptian constellations. The Egyptians had their own constellations, different from the Babylonian ones. They saw the hippopotamus in the northern sky, and the crocodile, and the great bull. In their temples, particularly at Dendera, Egyptian artists painted the ceiling with images of the sky. If you were to visit the Temple of Hathor at Dendera today, you could lie on your back on the cool stone floor and look up at a ceiling carved and painted 2,000 years ago. There you would see the Egyptian sky, filled with figures and symbols. But something interesting happened in this temple. Alongside the traditional Egyptian constellations, you would see something else. You would see the 12 signs of the zodiac in a form we would recognize. Aries the ram, Taurus the bull, all 12. How did they get there? The answer takes us to a moment of great cultural exchange when East met West, and the ancient world was transformed. Alexander and the Hellenistic Age. In 332 BCE, a young Macedonian king named Alexander led his army into Egypt. The Persian Empire, which had ruled Egypt for 2 centuries, collapsed before him. Alexander was crowned Pharaoh, and in doing so, he opened Egypt to Greek influence. Alexander didn't stay long. He had an empire to build, but he founded a city that would become one of the great centers of learning in the ancient world, Alexandria. Picture Alexandria in its glory, around 200 BCE. The harbor is filled with ships from across the Mediterranean. The Great Lighthouse, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, guides vessels to safety. And in the heart of the city stands the library, the museum, the gathering place for scholars from every land. Here, Egyptian priests met Greek philosophers. Babylonian astronomers shared their knowledge with Egyptian stargazers. Knowledge flowed like water, mixing and combining into something new. It was in this environment that Babylonian astrology and the Zodiac merged with Greek philosophy and Egyptian wisdom. The Greeks had already been exposed to Babylonian astronomy through their contacts in Asia Minor. Now, in Alexandria, This knowledge was systematized, refined, and transformed. The 12 signs take final form. The Greeks loved the Babylonian zodiac. It fit beautifully with their own system of thought. The philosopher Pythagoras had taught that numbers were the key to understanding the universe. 12 was a perfect number. It could be divided by 2, 3, 4, and 6. The Greeks also loved mythology, and so they took the zodiac signs and clothed them in their own stories. Aries became connected to the ram with the golden fleece. Taurus became the bull that Zeus transformed into when he carried Europa across the sea. Gemini became Castor and Pollux, the twin sons of Zeus. Cancer became the crab that Hera sent to distract Heracles during his battle with the Hydra. Leo became the Nemean lion that Heracles slew as his first labor, and so on. Each sign gained a story, a mythology, a personality. But more than that, the Greeks made astrology personal. Remember, Babylonian astrology had been about nations and kings. The Greeks asked, if the stars can predict the fate of kingdoms, can't they also predict the fate of individuals? This was a radical idea. It suggested that each person was important enough, special enough, to have their fate written in the stars. The moment you were born, when you took your first breath, the configuration of the heavens at that instant shaped who you would become. This was the birth of horoscopic astrology, astrology based on the individual birth chart. Part 3. The Flowering of Astrology. Let's move forward now to around 150 CE. The Roman Empire stretches from Britain to Mesopotamia, from the Rhine to the Nile. Latin is the language of power, but Greek remains the language of learning. In Alexandria, an astronomer and mathematician named Claudius Ptolemy is at work on a manuscript that will define astronomy and astrology for the next 1400 years. Ptolemy's vision. Picture Ptolemy in his study. Papyrus scrolls line the walls. On his desk are instruments for measuring angles and calculating positions. A celestial globe shows the stars, and before him, he's writing. He's writing 2 great works. One is called the Almagest, a comprehensive treatise on astronomy. The other is called the Tetrabiblos, the 4 books, a complete guide to astrology. In these works, Ptolemy brings together everything the ancient world knew about the stars. The Almagest describes a geocentric universe, with Earth at the center and the sun, moon, and planets revolving around it in crystalline spheres. It's wrong, of course. We know now that the sun is at the center of our solar system and that we orbit it. But Ptolemy's system worked brilliantly for predicting the positions of planets and stars, and it would remain the standard model of the universe until Copernicus. In the Tetrabiblos, Ptolemy presents astrology as a science, as rational and logical as geometry. He describes how the planets influence earthly events through their qualities. The sun is hot and dry. The moon is cold and moist. Saturn is cold and dry. Mars is hot and dry. Each planet has its nature, and when that planet occupies a sign of the zodiac, it colors that sign with its influence. He describes the 12 houses, 12 divisions of the sky based on the rotation of the Earth, representing different areas of life. The first house is the self. The 10th house is career and status. The 7th house is partnership, and so on. He explains aspects the angular relationships between planets that modify their influence. A trine, when 2 planets are 120 degrees apart, is harmonious. A square, when they're 90 degrees apart, creates tension. Under Ptolemy's pen, astrology becomes a complete system, intricate and beautiful. Like a great machine with countless gears, all turning in perfect synchronization. Astrology in daily life. By Ptolemy's time, astrology had permeated every level of Roman society. Emperors consulted astrologers before making major decisions. Wealthy families had their children's horoscopes cast at birth. Even common people might save up to have a chart drawn. In the bustling streets of Rome, you might encounter an astrologer set up in the forum, ready to cast your chart for a few coins. You tell him the date, time, and place of your birth. He'd calculate where the planets were at that moment, draw up your chart on a wax tablet, and interpret what he saw. He might say, "You were born with the sun in Leo and the moon in Scorpio. You have a proud nature but deep emotions. And see here, Mars is in your 10th house. You're suited for military life or perhaps law. People plan their lives by the stars. They chose wedding dates based on favorable planetary alignments. They planted crops when the moon was in fertile signs. They even chose when to cut their hair based on the lunar cycle." This might seem like superstition to modern ears. But remember, in the ancient world, the universe was seen as fundamentally meaningful. Nothing happened by chance. The cosmos was alive with purpose and intelligence. The question wasn't whether the stars influenced human life, of course they did. The question was only how to read their influence correctly. The planets and their meanings. Let's spend a moment with the planets themselves, the wandering stars that move through the zodiac, because understanding their characters is key to understanding how astrology works. First, the Sunday. In the ancient understanding, the sun was a planet too, moving around the earth. The sun represents the core self, vitality, the conscious ego. It's the king of the heavens, gold and glorious. The moon represents emotions, the subconscious, instinct, and the feminine principle. It waxes and wanes, changes and shifts. It governs water, tides, and the rhythms of the body. Mercury, the swift messenger, represents communication, intelligence, and travel. It moves quickly, never far from the Sunday. Venus is love, beauty, harmony, and pleasure. She's the morning star and evening star, the brightest planet in our sky. Mars is action, aggression, energy, and war. Red in the sky, associated with blood and fire. Jupiter, the largest planet, is expansion, wisdom, luck, and abundance. The king of the gods, benevolent and generous. Saturn, slow-moving and steady, is limitation, structure, discipline, and time. The teacher, the taskmaster. The ancients knew only these 7 planets: the Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. The outer planets Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto wouldn't be discovered until modern times. Each of these planets rules certain zodiac signs. The Sun rules Leo. The Moon rules Cancer. Mercury rules both Gemini and Virgo, and so on. When a planet is in a sign it rules, it's said to be particularly strong. Close your eyes and imagine these planets as characters in a great cosmic drama. Jupiter is the generous king. Saturn is the strict teacher. Mars is the warrior. Venus is the lover. They move through the theater of the zodiac, entering different scenes, meeting each other in various configurations, and their interactions create the infinite variety of human experience. Part 4. Through the Middle Ages. Time passes. The Roman Empire falls. Darkness, some say, descends on Europe, but knowledge doesn't disappear. It simply moves. Let's travel now to Baghdad, around 800 CE. This is the golden age of Islamic civilization. The Abbasid Caliphate is at its height, and in Baghdad, the House of Wisdom has been established, a great library and center of learning, much like Alexandria once was. Islamic astrology. The Islamic scholars preserved Greek and Roman knowledge that might otherwise have been lost. They translated Ptolemy's works into Arabic, they studied the Babylonian tables, and they advanced the science of astronomy significantly. Imagine a scholar named Al-Khwarizmi sitting in the House of Wisdom, calculating planetary positions with greater accuracy than ever before. His name, incidentally, would give us the word algorithm. Islamic astrology flourished. but it faced an interesting challenge. Islam taught that only God knew the future, that fate was in Allah's hands alone. How could astrology fit with this belief? The answer was subtle. Astrology, the scholars argued, didn't reveal fate with certainty. It revealed tendencies, inclinations, potentials. The stars showed what might happen if events took their natural course. But God could intervene at any moment. Prayer, good deeds, the mercy of Allah, these could change any destiny written in the stars. This made astrology more humble, less deterministic. It was a tool for understanding, not a crystal ball. Islamic astronomers made careful observations of the stars. They built observatories, created astrolabes, intricate instruments for calculating the positions of celestial bodies. They refined the calendar, and they passed this knowledge back to Europe. The medieval Christian world. In medieval Europe, astrology existed in an uneasy relationship with Christianity. On one hand, the church was suspicious. Did astrology contradict free will? Did it suggest that the stars, rather than God, controlled human destiny? On the other hand, educated Christians couldn't deny that the Bible itself seemed to acknowledge celestial influence. Didn't the Star of Bethlehem guide the Magi to Christ? Didn't the Psalms declare that the heavens proclaim the glory of God? A compromise was reached, similar to the Islamic one. Astrology could reveal physical and temperamental tendencies. The body and the passions were indeed influenced by the stars, but the soul, the rational mind, remained free. The stars incline, they don't compel. Medieval universities taught astrology alongside astronomy. The two weren't yet separated. A physician had to know astrology to practice medicine effectively. Different signs ruled different parts of the body. Aries ruled the head, Taurus the neck, Gemini the arms, and so on down to Pisces, which ruled the feet. If you fell ill in medieval times, the physician might consult the stars before treating you. Were the planets favorably aligned for bloodletting? Was the moon in a good sign for administering medicine? Picture a medieval castle at night. In a tower room, candles flicker. An astrologer spreads parchment on a table and begins to calculate. The lord of the castle wants to know when to march his army. The astrologer draws the chart for the proposed date. He sees Mars in the ascendant favorably aspected by Jupiter. "My lord," he says, "the stars favor your venture, but wait until Tuesday, when Mars is stronger." The zodiac in art and culture. Throughout the Middle Ages, the zodiac became woven into the fabric of European culture. Cathedral floors were decorated with zodiacal mosaics. Manuscripts were illuminated with beautiful depictions of the signs. The zodiac appeared in poetry, in paintings, in the decorative schemes of palaces and churches. Each sign was associated with a month. Medieval books of hours, prayer books for the wealthy, illustrated each month with its corresponding zodiac sign and an appropriate seasonal activity. In the January page, you might see Aquarius above, while below, people warm themselves by the fire. In July, Leo the lion presides over scenes of grain harvest. The zodiac marked time, connected heaven to earth, the eternal to the everyday. The language of astrology seeped into common speech. We still speak of being moonstruck or having a mercurial personality or a saturnine disposition. When things align favorably, we might say the stars were aligned. We call a catastrophic event a disaster, from the Latin for bad star. The zodiac was everywhere, as natural and accepted as the sunrise. Part 5. The Age of Reason. But change was coming. The Renaissance brought a new questioning spirit. And then came the scientific revolution. In 1543, a Polish astronomer named Nicolaus Copernicus published a revolutionary book. In it, he argued that the Earth wasn't the center of the universe. Instead, the Earth and the other planets revolved around the Sunday, The Copernican Revolution. This idea wasn't entirely new. Some ancient Greeks had suggested it, but Copernicus provided the mathematics to back it up, and it changed everything. If Earth wasn't at the center, if we were just one planet among many, all circling the sun, what did that mean for astrology? The entire system was based on a geocentric model, with influences flowing from the planets to Earth at the center. At first, astrologers weren't too worried. The system still worked, they argued. It didn't matter whether Earth or the Sun was at the center. What mattered was the relative positions of the planets as seen from Earth, and those hadn't changed. But then came more discoveries. Galileo turned his telescope to the heavens and saw mountains on the moon, moons orbiting Jupiter, phases of Venus. The heavens weren't perfect, unchanging crystal spheres. They were worlds, subject to the same physical laws as Earth. Isaac Newton described those laws with mathematics. Gravity, not angels or divine will, kept the planets in their orbits. The universe was a machine, vast and impersonal, running according to mathematical principles. Where was room for celestial influence in this new model? Where was the mechanism by which the planet Mars, millions of miles away, could affect human personality? The split between astronomy and astrology. Through the 17th and 18th centuries, a split occurred. Astronomy became a science focused solely on describing and predicting the motions of celestial bodies. Astrology became something else, something increasingly viewed with skepticism by the learned classes. The great astronomers of this age, men like Kepler and Galileo, still cast horoscopes. They needed to, it paid the bills, but they were increasingly uncomfortable with it. Kepler called astrology the foolish daughter of astronomy and hoped to reform it, to strip away the superstition and find a genuine physical basis for celestial influence. But as physics developed, no such basis could be found. The planets exert gravitational pull on Earth, yes, but it's vanishingly small. The obstetrician attending your birth exerts more gravitational influence on you than Jupiter does. By the 18th century, the Age of Enlightenment, educated Europeans largely dismissed astrology as superstition. It lingered among the common people, in farmers' almanacs and fortune-tellers' booths. But it had lost its prestige, its intellectual respectability. The Zodiac remained, but now only as a quaint anachronism. Newspapers might print horoscopes as entertainment, but few took them seriously. Astrology seemed to be dying. The Romantic reaction. But here's something interesting. Just when rational materialism seemed triumphant, a counter-movement began. The Romantics of the 19th century rebelled against the cold, mechanical universe of Newton. They sought mystery, meaning, and enchantment. Poets like William Blake railed against the dark, satanic mills of the Industrial Revolution and the reductionist worldview of science. They wanted a universe alive with meaning and magic again. In this environment, interest in astrology began to revive, not among scientists, but among artists, poets, and those drawn to the esoteric and mystical. Secret societies like the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn incorporated astrology into their teachings. Theosophists and spiritualists explored it. It became associated with the occult, with hidden knowledge, with paths of wisdom outside mainstream religion and science. The Zodiac began to represent something more than just a calendar or a fortune-telling tool. It became a symbolic language for understanding the human psyche, a mandala representing wholeness and the cycle of the soul's journey. Part 6. The Modern Zodiac. And so we arrive at the 20th century and the astrology we know today. In 1930, a British newspaper, the Sunday Express, decided to run a profile of the newborn Princess Margaret. They commissioned an astrologer named R.H. Naylor to contribute. Naylor wrote a piece titled, "What the Stars Foretell." The response was overwhelming. Readers wrote in by the thousands, asking for their own horoscopes. The newspapers saw an opportunity. They asked Naylor to write a regular astrology column. But there was a problem. Naylor couldn't write individualized horoscopes for thousands of readers. He needed a simpler system. So he decided to write forecasts based only on sun signs, the zodiac sign the sun was in when you were born. This was a dramatic simplification. Traditional astrology requires knowing not just your sun sign, but your exact birth, time, and place to calculate the rising sign, moon sign, and the positions of all the planets. A full horoscope might take hours to calculate, but sun sign astrology was simple. Anyone could know their sign just from their birth date, and it was perfect for mass media. Soon, newspapers across the world were running daily horoscopes. Aries, today is a good day for romance. Libra, watch your finances. 12 brief paragraphs that millions would read over their morning coffee. The psychological turn. But something else happened to astrology in the 20th century, something deeper. It merged with psychology. Carl Jung, the famous psychoanalyst, was fascinated by astrology. He saw the zodiac signs and planets as archetypes, fundamental patterns in the human psyche. He didn't claim the stars literally influenced personality. Instead, he suggested that astrology worked through synchronicity, a meaningful coincidence between inner and outer events. Your birth chart, in this view, wasn't a predictor of fate. It was a map of your psyche, showing your potential, your challenges, your gifts. The planets represented different aspects of your personality. Saturn was your inner taskmaster, Venus your capacity for love, Mars your drive and anger. This psychological approach to astrology became hugely influential. It made astrology respectable again, at least in some circles. You didn't have to believe in celestial rays or planetary influences. You could view astrology as a symbolic language, a tool for self-understanding. This is largely how astrology is practiced today in the West. Modern astrologers rarely make hard predictions. Instead, they offer guidance, insight, and reflection. They might say, with Saturn moving through your 7th house, this is a time to get serious about relationships, rather than, you will meet your spouse on Tuesday. Astrology today. In our current age, astrology is everywhere again. Astrology apps have millions of downloads. Astrology memes flood social media. Mercury retrograde has become a catchphrase for when technology fails or communication breaks down. Young people, especially, have embraced astrology with enthusiasm. In surveys, belief in astrology has been rising, especially among millennials and Gen Z. Why? Perhaps for the same reasons the Babylonians looked to the stars 5,000 years ago. We seek meaning. We seek to understand ourselves and our place in the universe. We want to believe that we're part of something larger, that there's a pattern to existence, that life isn't just random chaos. Science has given us tremendous power and knowledge, but for many, it hasn't filled the need for meaning and purpose. Astrology offers that. It suggests you're unique, special, that there's a cosmic reason you are the way you are. Is it true? That's the wrong question, perhaps. A better question might be, is it useful? Does it help people understand themselves? Does it provide comfort, guidance, or insight? For millions of people, the answer is yes. The precession problem. Before we finish our journey, there's one fascinating complication we should mention. It's called the precession of the equinoxes. When the Babylonians defined the zodiac around 400 BCE, they said Aries began at the spring equinox, the point where the sun crosses the celestial equator, marking the first day of spring. But there's a wobble in Earth's axis. Very slow, it takes about 26,000 years to complete one cycle. But it means that the position of the stars relative to the equinoxes slowly shifts. Today, when the sun reaches the spring equinox, it's not in the constellation Aries anymore. It's actually in Pisces. In fact, all the constellations have shifted by about one sign. This means that if you were born when the sun was in the constellation Virgo, your sun sign in Western astrology would be Libra. Does this invalidate astrology? Western astrologers say no. They explain that they use the tropical zodiac based on the seasons and the equinoxes, not the actual constellations. The sign Aries begins at the spring equinox, regardless of which constellation is actually there. But there's another system, Vedic or Hindu astrology, which does use the actual constellations, what's called the sidereal zodiac. In that system, your sign might indeed be different. It's a complication. A reminder that astrology is a human construction, adapted and changed over time. The stars themselves don't change, but what we see in them, what we call them, what we make them mean, that's always been up to us. Part 7. The meaning we make. And so we come to the end of our journey, here in the present day, looking up at the same stars the Babylonians saw. The zodiac has endured for over 2,000 years. It's passed through civilization after civilization, transformed and adapted, but never lost. From Babylonian omen tablets to Greek philosophy to Islamic science to medieval Christianity to modern psychology, the 12 signs have traveled with us. Why? What is it about these symbols, the ram, the bull, the crab, the lion, that speaks to something deep in human consciousness? Perhaps it's because the zodiac represents the eternal cycles. The sun travels through the signs, and the year turns. Spring becomes summer, becomes autumn, becomes winter, and then spring again. Birth, growth, death, rebirth. The endless wheel turning. Each sign represents a stage in that cycle, a mode of being, an archetype of human experience. Aries, the first sign, is the spark of new beginning, the pioneer, the hero setting out on a quest. Taurus is the builder, the settler, creating security and comfort. Gemini is the communicator, curious and adaptable. Cancer is the nurturer, creating home and family. Leo is the king, the creator, shining in self-expression. Virgo is the perfectionist, the healer, serving and refining. Libra is the diplomat, seeking balance and harmony. Scorpio is the transformer, diving into depth and mystery. Sagittarius is the philosopher, seeking truth and meaning. Capricorn is the master, building lasting structures. Aquarius is the revolutionary, breaking free and innovating. And Pisces is the mystic, dissolving boundaries and returning to unity. 12 modes of being, 12 ways of engaging with life, 12 faces of the divine. The need for stories. Human beings are storytelling creatures. We don't just want data about the world. We want narratives. We want meaning. We want to understand our lives as stories, with themes and arcs and significance. The zodiac provides that. It gives us a framework for understanding our personal journey. It connects us to something larger, to the cosmos, to the eternal cycles, to thousands of years of human wisdom. When someone asks, "What's your sign?" they're not really asking about astronomy. They're asking, "What's your story? What archetype do you embody? How do you move through the world?" And that question has power. It creates connection. It invites self-reflection. It suggests that each of us contains multitudes, that we're complex and contradictory, that we're part of a larger tapestry. Science and symbol. Now, does any of this mean that astrology is true in a literal, scientific sense? That the planet Venus actually radiates waves of love energy? That Saturn literally restricts us? Almost certainly not. Modern physics doesn't support it. Controlled studies of astrological predictions have generally shown no evidence that astrology works better than chance. But here's the thing. Humans have always and everywhere sought meaning in the world around us. We've seen patterns in clouds, in the flight of birds, in the patterns of tea leaves. We've told stories about the stars, about the mountains, about the rivers. These stories aren't scientific truths, but they're not lies either. There's something else. They're symbolic truths, psychological truths, poetic truths. The Zodiac is a language, and like any language, its value lies not in whether the sounds we make are objectively true, but in whether they help us communicate, understand, and connect. For thousands of years, the language of the Zodiac has helped human beings make sense of their experience. It's given them a way to talk about personality, about time, about fate and free will, about the mystery of being human. And that's a kind of truth too, closing under the same stars. So here we are, at the end of our journey through time. We've traveled from ancient Babylon to the present day, following the Zodiac as it was born, grew, transformed, died, and was reborn. And tonight, if you step outside and look up, you'll see the same stars the Babylonian priests saw. The same stars that guided Egyptian farmers and Greek philosophers and Arab astronomers and medieval astrologers and everyone who has ever looked up and wondered. The constellations are still there. Orion still hunts across the winter sky. The Great Bear still circles the pole. The band of the Milky Way still arcs overhead like a river of light. And somewhere along that river, the Zodiac still traces its path. The sun still makes its yearly journey through the 12 signs, marking the seasons, marking time. We know so much more now than the ancients did. We know the stars are distant suns, that the planets are worlds, that the universe is vast beyond imagining and ancient beyond comprehension. We know that we live on a small blue planet, one of billions in a galaxy that's one of billions. But we still look up. We still seek patterns. We still ask the eternal questions. Who am I? Why am I here? What does it all mean? And in that seeking, in that questioning, we're connected to every human being who has ever lived. We're part of a story that began when the first person looked up at the night sky and saw not just lights, but meaning. The Zodiac is part of that story. It's part of our inheritance as human beings. And whether you believe in astrology or not, whether you know your rising sign or barely know your sun sign, the Zodiac is part of your cultural DNA, part of the symbolic language that shapes how we think about ourselves and our world. So perhaps, before you sleep tonight, take a moment to appreciate that connection, to feel yourself as part of a long chain stretching back through time, to know that the questions you ask, the meaning you seek, echo across millennia. The Babylonian priest on his ziggurat, watching Venus rise. The Egyptian priest waiting for Sirius. The Greek philosopher calculating a birth chart. The Islamic astronomer refining the calculations. The medieval scholar studying by candlelight. And you, here now, under the same stars. All of us seeking meaning in the pattern of lights above. All of us telling stories about the stars. All of us part of the great human family, connected across time by our shared wonder and our endless questions. Rest now. Let these thoughts drift through your mind like clouds across the night sky. Let the ancient story of the Zodiac carry you gently towards sleep. The stars are still there, turning slowly overhead. The Zodiac is still there, marking time, marking seasons, marking the eternal cycles. And you are here, safe and warm, connected to thousands of years of human story, held in the great turning of the cosmos. The Babylonian priests would be glad to know their observations, their careful watching, their reverence for the heavens has reached you here, now, so far in their future. The Zodiac is a gift they gave us, a gift of meaning, of pattern, of connection. And now, it's time to rest. Let the stars watch over you tonight as they've watched over humanity since the beginning. Let sleep come gently, like the setting of the Sunday. The zodiac will still be there in the morning when you wake to a new day, a new turn of the wheel. But for now, rest. The stars are singing their ancient songs, and you are held in the rhythm of the cosmos. Good night.